South Dakota has a split season. This is the early season. It's a great opportunity if you can draw one of these tags to get out and hunt the early rut with a firearm. I got invited up here with my friend Levi Duncan. He's hunting with me. He's looking for a big mule deer. I'm looking for a big whitetail. If a big muley steps out in front of me though, I might have to trip him. We'll just see how that works out.
Steady rain. A heavy drizzle is how I describe it as we started out the morning. When we got to our point overlooking this real nice bottom again, the rain was starting to become more than steady. It was becoming irritating, but the deer movement was enough where it didn't bother me a bit. Deer were starting to come off the high fields to uplands, moving down into the bottom, and they were rutting really good. Other bucks were moving up and down the creek, including a real heavy-duty 4x4 buck. This buck had mass. He was definitely not a young deer, and he looked like he had a doe cornered. Like that doe was actually coming into heat. He was cutting her like a cutting horse, and before long had her moved off into another little refuge. We watched all these little scenarios play out. By the time lunch came around and we decided we should grab something to eat and warm up,
Levi, it's always nice to have sponsors on these hunting shows, you know, that you can just put into the pictures subliminally sometimes and just not be so, you know, like huge and blaring. And it just, sponsors are always hard to get on these hunting shows.
after lunch, the rain really started picking up. It did not let up. We slid, I mean slid, because it was getting muddy, our way, creeping, crawling right up to a ledge we can look into this buck's bedroom. Luckily, when we decided to make our move, the rain actually stopped from a rain down to just a mist or a drizzle. So when we got up high enough to see the whole ranch, we didn't have to worry about having our slickers on. In fact, what we needed was more optics. We needed more people to help us look. Why? Deer were everywhere. They were like ants. Every direction you looked, there was a rutting whitetail or rutting mule deer. They were everywhere. You could not imagine what was going on. Why the change from last night we could barely get a deer to get out of its bed to tonight when every deer was in disco mode? Well, the fact of the matter was, it was the moisture. High humidity and a little bit of drizzle in the air turned these deer on just like if you clamped jumper cables on your truck and turned it over. They were jump started and ready to rut. And we had all the action we could ever want, and our eyes were getting strained by the minute. I spied a doe staring back at us, and as I flipped my binocular just a little bit left of that doe, a huge rack emerged on the horizon.
Get on that deer right there.
It was a big buck. The one, or one of the bucks Levi had been teasing me about was there in the flesh. Fortunately, the buck wasn't that spooked. He bounded off over the hill. And you know what? That's the way it is when you're trying to film. So, with a half-spooked buck, a good idea where his home territory was now, because as I went back and talked to Levi, he said he saw that same buck in the same spot several times before. I had a pretty good plan for the morning. Get in early, get close to the creek, pinch that buck as hard as we could, and leave Levi up high. That way, I had a for sure shot. He was gonna spot anything else going on around us, and one way or another, no mature buck was going to get past us the very next morning.
You're watching Mark Kayser hunt whitetails on the Missouri Bluffs. I've hunted that country, and let me tell you, it is vertical. You never know what kind of shots you're gonna get, and you have to be prepared for just about anything. In a perfect world, you'd always have your feet planted firmly beneath your body. You'd be complete control of your nerves and your breathing, and you'd have all the time in the world to make a shot at a relaxed and unaware trophy buck. But let me tell you, it doesn't always work that way. Here, I'll tell you a story. Last fall, I was hunting whitetails in Iowa when a buck came in at a sharp angle behind my tree stand. I was wrapped around the tree like a contortionist when I released the arrow. The key? My upper body was consistent to my practice shooting stance, even though my lower body was twisted like a pretzel. When you're in a tree stand, try to keep your body in a consistent T-form. That means your torso is lined up perpendicular to your arms. So when you draw back the bow, you're going to have to bend at the waist to make the shot, a downhill shot. But still, your upper body is still in consistent form.